Okay, just gonna wait for some folks to file in here. What is up, everyone? I am in frigid Tampa. It is 65 in my office, and I have Raynaud syndrome, which means I get poor circulation to my fingers and toes, and they're all numb right now. So I am doing this for y'all to try and get you to answer your questions and get some good info out to you. So today's live is being brought to you by my nutrition coaching app, Carbon. If you guys have not checked out Carbon, it is customized nutrition coaching for less than $10 a month. It is an algorithm-based app, which I helped write the algorithm and am very involved in the development of the app over the last 4 years. So with that being said, happy to answer any of your questions about Carbon, about nutrition, about training. Please put them in the question box so I can pull them up. Love Carbon. Awesome. Thank you so much. If you guys love Carbon, let me know. I love hearing that. Okay, since I just did a fiber post, I'll take this real quick. Somebody says, fiber ruins my guts. Explain that. Well, if you read the comments on my post, I put a comment down there because the best thing you can do one of the best things you can do for your gut microbiome health is to consume enough fiber and consume enough diverse array of fiber sources. Now, some people say, well, fiber is bad for the gut because I take in fiber and I get inflamed. First off, you're misunderstanding what inflammation is. Fiber has been consistently shown to lower CRP, IL-6, and systemic markers of inflammation. What you are experiencing and what people who have a sensitivity to fiber experience is you are experiencing GI distress. And this is typically people who have IBS. And that is basically you are sensitive to the gas production from fiber, which is actually what produces a lot of the benefits. And people with IBS have been shown to have a much greater sensitivity to even the same amount of pressure. So what I will say is you want to consume some sources of fiber that produce less gas, but you still get the fiber. So what you'll want to do is what's called an elimination diet. And one of the reasons that people say, well, I did carnivore diet and my gut health got so much better. No, carnivore diet in the short term probably alleviated your symptoms because you're not producing a lot of gas. But in the long term is going to actually be really bad for your risk of colorectal cancer. So what you can do is do an elimination diet, which carnivore diet is basically a kind of elimination diet. But the purpose of an elimination diet is to not stay on an elimination diet. The purpose of an elimination diet is to then add foods back in one at a time once your symptoms are under control. So you use the elimination diet to get your symptoms under control. And then you add sources of fiber one at a time and see which ones you tolerate. And then once you figured out what ones you tolerate, then you can get enough fiber in, you get the benefits of fiber without so much GI distress. And that's a very easy thing to do, very simple, but a lot of people just don't want to do it, or they do the elimination diet and they go, oh, this diet's the answer since I don't have pain right now. But you're feeling better in the short term, but it's not going to be good for you in the long term if you don't get some sources of fiber. And some of people also have sensitivity to FODMAPs, and you can look up low FODMAP diet, which if a lot of you have GI distress from fiber sources, you can just switch to a low FODMAP diet and it will probably fix a lot of people's issue with fiber. With that being said, I'm going to pull up some questions here and we'll go through them. And we've also got YouTube, and we've got Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook on here. So let me just look through some questions here. One second. how does non-soluble, yeah, let me just put this up here. Question is, how does non-soluble fiber work in the gut? So you have two basic fiber types, soluble and non-soluble. And soluble is also called fermentable, and non-soluble or insoluble is also called non-fermentable. And the reason is that your gut microbiome, your gut bacteria, can ferment the soluble sources of fiber, and they can use that to create short-chain fatty acids. And the short-chain fatty acids themselves, like butyrate, actually have a lot of benefits on like insulin sensitivity, heart disease, risk of cancer, and colorectal cancer. Insoluble fiber is not really a fuel for the gut microbiome, although there is some rodent data suggesting that perhaps there are some species of bacteria that actually can use insoluble fiber to produce some short-chain fatty acids, but this hasn't been shown in humans yet. But what insoluble fiber does do is it adds a lot of bulk to your stool. So insoluble fiber will add bulk, and it will also draw water into your colon, and that helps with elimination of fecal matter. Now, but some people say, well, I poop just fine, so why have it? Well, by increasing your gut motility, there is some evidence that that actually has a positive effect on the risk of colorectal cancer, because you're not keeping, if fecal matter is sitting in your intestines longer because you don't have enough soluble fiber, there is some, I would say, tenuous hypothesis that there are, toxins in that cellular matter and fecal matter that could have a negative interaction with the colon and lead to increased risk of colon cancer. And we do see decreased risk of colon cancer with increased insoluble fiber intake. So at minimum, it's going to help you poop, which who doesn't love a good poop? And at best, it's going to reduce your risk of colon cancer by increasing gut motility. All right, let's see here. Let's take a question off of, yes, YouTube. You can post a question there and it will pull up, Danny. You can do that. Okay, since we're on fiber topic, off of YouTube, Peter says, hey, Layne, what are your preferred ways to consume more fiber in your diet? And does Carbon have any plans to add fiber tracking features similar to how you can view individual macros? So first off, you can view your fiber intake in Carbon Diet Coach. All you have to do is, if you're on your home diary screen, press the little I near the circles, press the nutrients buttons. They've changed it. Press the nutrients button, and that will pull up like your saturated fat, your polyunsaturated fat, your fiber, your vitamins, your minerals, your micronutrients. So you can find it right there. So yes, you can do that with Carbon. As far as like what sources of fiber do I personally use, I usually eat quite a bit of fruit and vegetables, probably 5 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. And that comes from, I have some frozen meals down there, just being honest, like some power bowls that use like riced cauliflower. So cauliflower, cruciferous vegetables. I also take in broccoli and like bell peppers and stuff. I like those. And then I love apples, strawberries, blueberries. And then I also eat oatmeal. I also eat like whole grains and cereals. And then actually a sneaky good source of fiber is actually low-fat popcorn or air pop popcorn. Like the Jolly Time Healthy Pop has, I think, 8 grams of fiber per bag, and is delicious and very delicious and a very great source of fiber. So I'll usually get, my average is probably about 50 grams of fiber a day. On my higher days, I'll probably get around 60 or 70. My lowest, it's like I might have some days at 30. Like if I'm, just be honest, if I'm like with friends and drinking some alcohol or whatever, I may get a little bit less fiber in. But yeah, those are kind of my main sources, and you can track it in Carbon. Let's see here. Let's see some other questions off Instagram here. Wow, lots of questions off Instagram. Okay, let's see. Okay, great question. How does Carbon compare to the RP diet app, so the Renaissance periodization app? So I've never used the RP Diet app. So I'm just going to give you feedback that other people have given us. It seems to be a great app. What I would say is RP is more restrictive. They're going to tell you, eat these foods at these times, which if you're like new, maybe that's like, maybe that's more beneficial, kind of like training wheels to get you going. But it's far less flexible at what you do. Whereas Carbon, you basically have way more flexibility. And that's been the feedback. So people who, people enjoy the simplicity of Carbon and the flexibility. And somebody just asked about MacroFactor. MacroFactor is another great app. But I would say that, you know, MacroFactor gives you a ton of information. But for a lot of people, myself included, I can get into information overload. And for Carbon, we try to keep it simple. We try to keep it information that you need to know. And if you want to dig deeper, you can dig deeper in our app. But we try to make it as user-friendly as possible because at the end of the day, we want people to have the maximum adherence to the app. So that's what I would say is the difference. Okay. Let me try and find some other questions here. Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking for a good question here. Is there a safe upper limit to trans fatty acid consumption? We don't really have direct studies on this, but the answer is probably no. Trans fats in any dose are probably not great. But they're really not a big part of the food supply anymore. In fact, I'm pretty sure they've been banned from the food supply. So I don't think you really need, at least if you're in a Western country, I don't think you need to worry about trans fats. I'm pretty sure most countries have actually banned their usage. Question, if you've had a human coach for some time, how to transition back to Carbon coach? Just let it relearn your trends or start new? So Lindsay, thanks for your question. I would say, you know, what you could do is if you've been with a coach for a long time, you probably have a pretty good idea of what your maintenance calories are. So when you go back into Carbon, I would start a new goal. But during the sign-up flow, you can input manually your maintenance calories. So that's probably the one change I'd make is just if you know your maintenance calories, go ahead and manually input them because that will kind of give Carbon a little bit of a head start. Otherwise, if you don't know them, you can just start fresh like it's your first time doing the goal, and Carbon will pretty quickly learn you and figure out your optimal macros. Okay. Let's see. Is the 30 gram of protein per meal limit true? Now, when I hear this phrased, typically this is, you know, you can only absorb 30 grams of protein per meal. That's complete nonsense. That is absolute and utter nonsense. There really is no limit on protein absorption, but protein absorption, I think, you asked the question about protein absorption, but what you're really asking is what is the maximum used for anabolism? And we don't have a really clear picture on that. If you are not resistance training, the anabolic cap appears to be around like 20 to 40 grams, depending on the source of protein. Higher quality sources of protein needing less total protein. If you're resistance training hard, that's where it gets a little bit less clear, especially with this new study that came out showing that, you know, you could use up to 100 grams of protein at a sitting. I think we need more time to kind of suss that out. But you absorb basically all of it. I mean, whatever the bioavailability is. I mean, most high-quality protein sources are above 90% bioavailable. So your absorption is simply what you eat doesn't wind up those molecules, those amino acid molecules, do they end up in circulation? And the answer is you absorb the vast majority of it. And so it's not an absorption issue. Just because you absorb it doesn't mean it's utilized for anabolism. And so I think the question you're asking is like, what level of protein intake in a meal is useful for anabolism? And we don't have necessarily a clear idea of that. But I would say for the most part, we know that like 1.6 to 2.8 grams per kilogram of lean mass is probably like the range of what is, optimal for maximizing muscle mass. And so I would recommend whatever protein amount that is for you. For me, like I eat about 230 grams a day, and I divide that up over 4 to 5 meals in the day. And so I'm usually consuming anywhere from 40 to 60 grams of protein in a meal. And that's what I do. And like I said, when there's not clear research, I'm just going to tell you what I do. Okay. I'm going to address this because a lot of you guys are asking about Paul Saladino because he just posted today. Paul Saladino seems like a nice guy, but I know you guys disagree. Do you respect his approach and his response and tone? He seems to be respectful and open to conversation. I respect the fact that he's not nasty about it, but I don't respect that he's very intellectually dishonest. But what I mean by that is he is very inconsistent in his logic. So he will, first off, let's take the broccoli thing, right? So he's like, there's isocyanates in it. Look at this research that's shown that isocyanates can bind to iodine. That's going to decrease your iodine absorption. It's going to impact your thyroid. It's going to lower your metabolic rate. It's going to make you gain weight. And that's why broccoli is bullshit. While he completely ignores the human randomized control trials showing that cruciferous vegetable intake not only does it cause weight gain, if anything, it reduces body weight. And it's been shown to have no negative effects on thyroid function or metabolic rate. So, okay, if you just want to have an opinion, and I told him this, I sent him a DM. I said, hey, man, you're allowed to have an opinion. You could say, there's no data to back this up, but this is my opinion. Fuck, I just did that. Like, I literally just did that. I was like, hey, we don't have a whole lot of data on this. Here's what I do, right? That's totally fine. Somebody can do that. But what's not cool is to be like, I know the answer. Here's the answer. It's this. And here's the study to support that I'm cherry picking to support it. And then when somebody points out the hypocrisy of that, you go, well, scientific research isn't perfect and nutritional research isn't perfect. And these are my clinical observations. Wait. Scientific research was okay when it was a study you were cherry picking. But now we have to question all scientific research because it doesn't fit your bias. That is intellectual dishonesty at its finest, okay? And epidemiology. Paul literally has a video where he says epidemiology is garbage. But on the Joe Rogan podcast a few years ago, repeatedly cited epidemiology that supported what he wanted to be true, that supported his narrative. If I am giving a subject, I will give you both sides of it. Okay, even today with the fiber post. Okay, I ran out of room in the caption, but I continued in the comments. I talked about, hey, I know some people don't tolerate fiber well, and here's what you can do if you don't feel like you tolerate fiber well. Okay, that is fine to do, but to ignore vast swaths of data, and then when you get called out on it, go, well, research isn't perfect, and so that means we don't need research. Like, what? So, okay, research isn't perfect, but you think your feelings are more reliable than research? I'm sorry, what? Like, that is completely intellectually dishonest and disingenuous, and it blows my mind that you guys don't see it sometimes. And then here's the other thing. Why does Paul rent so much space in your head? He really doesn't. You have to understand that I don't go looking for this stuff. When people like Paul or like a Gary Brecka, when they put out a video, thousands of people send it to me and ask my opinion. And so instead of responding to each individual person, I go, a lot of people are getting this video. It would be far more useful for me to make a piece of content around this to address it than responding to each individual 1,000 people. And if 1,000 people message me that means there's probably 100,000 that saw it and didn't message it to me. So listen, I would much rather not have to cover this stuff. I would much rather just talk about the stuff that works and be positive. But I'm sorry, this is not occupying space in my head. It's not hating. Not being okay with bullshit is not the same thing as being a hater. You'll never be fully effective so long as you put energy towards people spreading misinformation. My Instagram metrics would say otherwise. Thank you. Also, I love it that people are like, you're a hater, it's occupying space in your head. So hang on. So I'm being negative. So the person spreading misinformation and being intellectually dishonest and not taking accountability when they're wrong, that person, but they say it nicely, so they're positive. And the person actually citing research and giving you both sides of things and giving context and nuance and, I don't know, not being business partners with Liver King, who was lying repeatedly. And Paul said, I had no idea he was on drugs. Oh, come on. So I'm the negative one, but Paul, he's an angel. I just don't know what to say about that kind of stuff. Like, it blows my fucking mind, to be honest. Let's see here. You know what? I think, guys, bro, why are you getting emotional? I think you mistake, I'm very passionate about this stuff. So, I have emotion because I'm very passionate about these topics. There's nothing wrong with being passionate about certain topics, especially when I've seen the downstream effects of this stuff. You guys don't see the downstream effects of this stuff, especially as it relates to the development of eating disorders and disordered eating patterns. A lot of these influencers, quite frankly, guys, have become famous for having eating disorders that are undiagnosed. Like, they're literally like feral cats who are afraid of everything, okay? And just, oh my God, that food. Oh my God, that food. In fact, I got an email from a person who runs an eating disorder clinic. So they inpatient treat eating disorders. And they told me specifically about Paul's oatmeal video that they had just gotten a girl to eat oatmeal because she felt comfortable that oatmeal was okay, because she hadn't seen any videos talking about how oatmeal was bad. And then that week, Paul dropped his oatmeal video and she stopped eating oatmeal. Okay. So this is the shit that nobody wants to talk about because people get so scared of all these foods and have so much food anxiety, they feel like they can eat nothing. Okay. And in some cases they do. And eating disorders, by the way, no, this is not anecdote, Jimmy. By the way, eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental health disorder, including depression. You can go look it up, go right ahead. It has the highest fatality rate. So when you say, you're getting emotional about this, or, this occupies space in your head, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Because it literally kills people. So, I'm sorry if I'm not cool with that kind of stuff. All right. No more Paul Saldino stuff. What else we got here? Do we hold protein reserves like carbohydrates? What happens to excess dietary protein in our bodies? Great question. So protein is very unique in that, unlike carbohydrate and unlike fat, we don't really have a storage reservoir for it. There is a small amino acid pool, but it's very, very small. And, some people will say, well, lean tissue is a storage for amino acids. That's like saying if you build a house out of wood, it's a wood storage because you can get wood out of it. Yeah, theoretically you can, but that's not why you build the house. So no, there's really no storage form of protein, which is why we said that we think that, possibly protein distribution matters since you can't store it. Like under consuming it at one time, you should not be able to like compensate by over consuming it at another time. But there is a new study that came out of Joan Travel and Luc Van Loon's lab that suggested that up to 100 grams of protein could be utilized for muscle anabolism. But the issue with that was done in untrained men after a really challenging resistance training session. And it doesn't fit with some of the other evidence we have on protein distribution. So I think what that study shows, because somebody else asked me about that study, I think what that study shows is that, one, if you're doing hard resistance training and there's a lot of demand for protein turnover, that cap on a meal basis can drastically increase because you're creating the demand for that protein, those amino acids. But if you're not hard resistance training, then protein distribution may matter a little bit more. I still think for the most part, it's probably good to spread your protein over like 3 to 5 protein containing doses per day. And for my fasters out there, a new study showed that protein does not negatively affect autophagy. So you don't even need to fast to get the benefits of autophagy. Just keep your carbs and fats down and have some protein, and you can have the anabolic effect without affecting your precious autophagy. You talk about Paul a lot. That's because people bring him to me a lot, and he creates a lot of content that's not true. So if he was doing evidence-based content that was accurate, I wouldn't talk about him. Let's take an example. Brett Contreras has almost 2 million followers. I've never called out Brett because Brett makes evidence-based content. And when he talks about something that isn't supported by research, he just says, hey, this is my personal experience. But, I haven't called Brett out. Why is that? Oh, because he's not full of shit. That's why. Like, if you guys think I'm just picking out people at random with big followings to go after, that's not how it works. I've been calling out Paul Saladino for false claims for over 5 years now. 5 years ago, he had when I first saw him, he had like 3,000 followers, and I had over 100,000, and I was still calling him out back then. So, this whole you're clout chasing, you're a hater, you guys just haven't been paying attention. We all agree that Paul is mostly a quack. No, you don't. Read the comments. No, you guys don't. A lot of people believe that he is evidence-based. Let's see here. Oh, hang on. Sorry, wrong question. Sorry, guys. There's a lot of questions on here, and I'm trying to scroll to find them. To find one I haven't answered yet. Do you agree with Minno's assertion that most protein bars are crap and full of FODMAPs? So protein bars have a lot of fermentable sources in them, which is why they give a lot of people gas. Like for me, I know that if I have too much maltol or sorbitol, which are sugar alcohols, man, it will tear me up. If I get much more over 8 grams of sorbitol or maltol, whoo boy, it's going to be bad for me and anybody within close proximity of me. So are they crap? Listen, it's all about what you're eating it instead of, okay? If you're at home and you have access to Whole Foods and you choose a protein bar, I'd argue that wasn't the best choice. But if you're, at work, you've got limited options. If you're on the road, if I'm on a plane, a protein bar is still going to be better than whatever, like plain food in most cases, or like fast food or whatnot. So it has to be contextualized. Do I think protein bars are the best source of food in most cases? No, but do I think they can occupy a spot where they make sense for some people? Of course. There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, in the words of the wise Thomas Sowell. Let's see here. YouTube, Facebook, hit me with some questions. What about psyllium husks as a fiber supplement? I think, that's like, I'm pretty sure that's like Metamucil. I'm always going to recommend whole food sources of fiber or whole food sources for almost most things. But if you have trouble meeting your fiber requirements, that's better than nothing. So absolutely, it can be a good source for fiber. But I would still try to recommend getting whole food sources of fiber as well. Happy birthday, Bartholomew. Special request. Why could broccoli be anti-carcinogenic? Great question. We kind of covered this earlier, but it has both soluble and insoluble fiber. Insoluble fiber helps decrease gut transit time, and there's some evidence that decreasing gut transit time can decrease the risk of colorectal cancer. Also, by adding bulk to your stool, it makes it easier to eliminate your fecal matter, poop. And there's evidence that so you can get what's called diverticulitis, which basically you have to understand that your GI is like a tube, and it does these wave-like contractions called peristalsis, which moves the food down your GI, your tube, for lack of a better term. And if you're not getting enough bulk, if you don't have enough bulk, sometimes your muscles have to contract harder in those peristaltic contractions, and it can actually create outpouchings called diverticuli that small pieces of food can get caught in and create infections. And those are actually risk factors for developing colorectal cancer. So that's how insoluble fiber may help reduce the risk of cancer. Soluble fiber may do it through multiple different reasons. One, because soluble fiber improves the overall milieu that the gut microbiome are exposed to. And it appears to create a better, kind of more diverse microbiome that may be antitumorigenic. Also, fermentable soluble fiber gets fermented by your gut microbiome to short chain fatty acids like propionate and butyrate. Butyrate in particular, people who produce more butyrate have significantly lower risk of cancer, heart disease, and have better insulin sensitivity. So that appears to be like some of the ways that it exerts its effects. Also, it can lower LDL cholesterol, and LDL cholesterol is a causative risk factor for heart disease. So that's like a few different ways that we think that fiber decreases the risk of cancer, also decreases the risk of heart disease, and improves longevity. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I just put up a post on that today. Okay, Nathan on Facebook asks, what's your thoughts on carb cycling, and will adjusting the macros day to day affect the weekly check-in? So in Carbon Diet Coach, our app, you can use the diet planner feature, and you can adjust specific days to have more or less calories based on your preference, social events, your training, whatever you want. And the great thing is as you adjust one day, it will adjust the other days so that your weekly calorie budget stays the same. But I think Nathan's asking, well, if you're fluctuating them, isn't your weight going to fluctuate, and couldn't that affect your check-in? That's why we recommend weighing in daily, to log your weight daily, because if you log your weight daily, the app is going to take all those weights into account. So even if there's fluctuations, the app is still looking at the average over, and we don't just look at like one average, we're actually looking at, I can't give away too much because it's kind of proprietary, but we're looking at multiple weeks of data in terms of how we make adjustments, and not just like single weigh-in days. So no, if you're being consistent with weighing in and tracking your macros, even if you do calorie cycling, it should not affect your check-in. A lot of people are asking me about like specific conditions, like a sunken eye condition. Some people ask about other conditions, like skin conditions. How can I fix this through diet? Guys, diet is not always the answer. There are some things you can't fix through diet. It's like saying like, hey, I've got HIV. How do I fix it through diet? Like there's no dietary treatment I know of that's going to fix that. Like some things are not modifiable through diet. And I'm always curious why people think that nutrition, like I'm a PhD in nutrition, I love nutrition, but it's not the solution for everything. And it's also not the cause of everything. So many people will have, like a friend of mine, she's a nurse practitioner at a hormone balance clinic. And she was helping somebody get their hormones back in line, like the actual evidence-based way, not the BS way you see on Instagram. And so part of that was the person had low testosterone, so they were prescribed testosterone. And they were like, oh, my side hurts. It must be the testosterone. And she was like, no, it sounds like a kidney stone, And that would have started well before you've only been taking testosterone a few weeks. The kidney stones take a long time to develop. Sure enough, it was a kidney stone, but they were convinced it was like the testosterone that did it, even though there's no evidence that it does that. And so I think, people were so quick, and I know that's not diet, but people are so quick to just like with their training, their supplementation, their nutrition, that they feel like if anything happens, it must be the cause of, and it very likely is like none of that. Like psychological stress will fuck you up way worse than a lot of nutrition stuff. I'll be honest with you guys. A lot of people who have autoimmune disorders, who have IBS, there are strong links between psychological stress, unmanaged psychological stress, trauma, and autoimmune and IBS. Like, go look it up. You can see it. So I think so many people spend so much time worried about stuff that doesn't matter, and then they like completely don't even bother to think about managing their psychological stress. Let's see here. Oh, sorry. Been a long day. This is a funny question. Do you ever get I heard about this topic from family members and they're just wrong according to research? How does that go? It depends. So a funny story, a friend of mine's dad was talking about like these gummies that clear out your arteries, and that it's recommended by the top cardiologist in the world. And I'm like, I don't know them well enough to like really be like, hey man, that's actually bullshit, So in that case, unless somebody asks my opinion, I just don't say anything. But my parents are actually like, my family members tend to actually listen to what I have to say. They also know not to ask me if they don't want to hear the answer. But I typically don't give feedback. Dave Ramsey has a saying, which is, those convinced against their will are of the same opinion still. And I have found that to be true. Most people don't ask questions to get answers. Most people ask questions to get their biases confirmed, to confirm what they already believe to be true. And I think if my experience on social media has taught me anything over the last few years, it's that most people don't actually care about truth. Most people don't actually care about getting the right answer. They just want to feel like what they're already doing is the best thing they can possibly do, which is why a lot of these influencer content appeals to them, because they're seeking out influencers that already align with their bias. But you guys don't realize that most of us live in information silos. Like you see this with politics. If you're a Republican and you follow only Republicans, you're getting only Republican stuff in your feed. You think the whole world thinks like that. And then when you get exposed to somebody with different thoughts than you, you freak out. And the same goes for Democrats, and the same goes for these diet tribes. Like you think, wow, look at all these people who are having the same experience as me. That's because your social media has been curated to reinforce your biases. And because when it comes to information that supports our bias, our level of skepticism is like non-existent. When it comes to information that refutes our bias or doesn't support our bias, our level of skepticism is here. It is a human problem, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how to fix it. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be what destroys the world in the end, to be honest. Yeah, somebody said humans love self-preservation. It probably is a survival response because we needed to be tribal, thousands of years ago. In order to survive, we had to be with our tribe. We didn't want to stand out, be alone. And so it created like this environment where we want to buy into tribalism. And unfortunately, that is really problematic now. Maston says, can you explain how a scientist would respond to criticism like you directed at Paul? Great question, Maston. I love this question. So, and I'll use myself as an example. A few months ago, I did a post, and in the post, I said that the average daily fiber intake in the US was 6 grams per day. And a dietitian came in the comments and was like, that's wrong. The average intake is 13 grams per day. Here are the citations. I went and looked at the citations, and she was absolutely right. So here's how a real scientist responds. I pinned the comment, and I said, you know what? I wasn't aware of that. I was operating off some old information, and I was wrong about that, and thank you for correcting me. And since then, I have adjusted what I say. Oh, wow! Amazing! Crazy! Holy shit! God, imagine that. Imagine taking accountability for getting something wrong and then adjusting your statements to fit the data. Holy crap. Anyways, thanks for the question, Master. I love that question. All right, one more question. Danny on YouTube says, how many check-ins before the coach adjusts your daily calories? Recently, I changed my goal and my calories went up by 400. I've been using Carbon for a month. So what I would say is you probably want to at least stay on a goal for at least a month before you switch when you're on Carbon. It usually takes a few check-ins before the app really has you dialed in, but it's pretty quick. But usually I tell people if you're on a goal for a month and you're consistent, you're weighing in each day, you're logging your weight, and you are doing your check-ins on time and you're logging your foods correctly, within a month, the app's going to have you dialed in. So, we're pretty conservative with how the algorithm makes changes initially, just because there can be some pretty severe body weight fluctuations. Like if you're going into a cut, your weight can drop more than usual the first week. And then if you're going into a bulk, your weight can go up a little bit more than usual from water fluctuations. So we are a little bit more conservative in those first few weeks. But after like 4 weeks, the app's going to have you dialed in. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you to Carbon for sponsoring this live. If you guys are looking for, okay, real quick, why do you like Carbon more than MyFitnessPal? Because MyFitnessPal only is a tracker. That's it. If you go to MyFitnessPal and you put in your information, it will give you kind of macros that are kind of customized, but it's really like, it's meh. But then they're not adjusted. They just give you that and you go off forever. And you can't change them day to day. You can't do calorie cycling, nothing like that. With Carbon, not only do we give you initial nutrition recommendations based on your individual metabolism, based on your goals, the app adjusts those recommendations based on how you progress to optimize them to get to your goal, just like a coach would. So, MyFitnessPal is literally just a tracker. That's it. That's all you can do with it. Carbon coaches you to your goal. We've had multiple people, several people lose well over 100 pounds using Carbon Diet Coach. We've had people win pro cards in bodybuilding using Carbon Diet Coach. We've had pro athletes. We've had Lando Venata, Matt Brown, both UFC fighters have used Carbon Diet Coach. So there's really no goal when it comes to either building muscle or losing fat that Carbon cannot help you with. And at $10 a month, it is a fraction of what good evidence-based nutrition coaching usually costs. I've used it myself personally for 4 years. And I've gone I've won 2 national titles in powerlifting. I've won a world title. And I'm at a body weight where I have to, it's a very lean body weight for me. And so I need the app to help me dial it in. So you can see all the comments about people who love Carbon. We have tens of thousands of happy users. I highly recommend it. I would not recommend it. I don't recommend anything I don't stand behind. I stand behind this because I was extremely involved in the writing of this algorithm, in how the app functions, in the user interface, and it's just $10 a month. And you can cancel at any time. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this live. Please go check out Carbon Diet Coach. I appreciate you all following. Even if you like Paul Saladino, still appreciate you following. Even if you talk a little smack, I appreciate it. It's good to challenge me. Hope you guys have a great day and stay warm.